Surviving Sepsis is a production of the IPRO QIN-QIO.
As a fireman stationed at the Albany, New York airport, Josh Woodward knew how quickly a fire can spread, ravaging everything in its wake. But he didn't know that sepsis could spread just as rapidly and be just as deadly. A fire often starts with a small spark, and that's how Josh's battle with sepsis began. As the infection spread undetected throughout his body, it affected his vital organs and extremities. After 6 weeks in the hospital and months in a rehab center, Josh returned home as a double amputee lucky to be alive. I'm Patrick Archambault with the IPRO QIN-QIO. In this series, Josh and his wife Chelsea share their story in the hope that it will raise awareness about the danger of sepsis, the effect it can have on individuals and families, the unexpected hurdles that patients face, and the importance of resiliency and overcoming these challenges.
So you kept the community updated on Josh's progress through social media and received overwhelming support. Did that support from the community help you get through this?
Absolutely. The support from the community was both wonderful, I feel necessary, and a little bit overwhelming. And when I was in the hospital, that was my lifeline. I was just posting updates on what was happening, and people would comment, "We're praying for you, we're thinking of you." But also people would educate me. They would tell me stories of hope of my cousin went through something similar, or depending on what we were talking about, whether it was his kidneys or his heart, or and somebody they knew had a kidney transplant and now they're thriving, or somebody they knew had a terrible ejection fraction and now it's improved. And that was so helpful. I think on the overwhelming side, when we would go out in public sometimes right after, especially when we were still dealing with the very new effects of our wildly new life. Sometimes we'd be out, but maybe not feeling great. And people would come up to us and, "You're so inspirational." And and we'd be like, "Oh yeah, thank you." But as a whole, I don't think we could have done it without the support of our community, truly.
So Josh, for treatment and recovery after sepsis, what was it like for you in rehab? And did it push you to the breaking point, or did it motivate you to do more? And what was it like to use your new prosthesis?
I think that many times I was probably pushing myself harder than I should have, or pushing myself more than what people would allow. I remember the first time I got up out of a wheelchair and started trying to walk around, and she would not like that so much. Actually, even way before that, I was just determined. I do not accept any of this without embracing too much denial. I'm trying to walk that line of how much do I accept and how much do I fight. One of the first things I remember doing when waking up out of my coma was trying to get out of the bed, yes. Trying to walk. I see the black feet, I see the dead tissue, and I know I have all these ports in me, but I'm not really with it mentally. And so multiple times trying to get out of bed and walk, and nurses have to come over no, try to get me back in line. A few times before I could even walk, I pushed myself to go to the gym and hated it because I don't like, getting stared at, and I got this knee crutch and this scooter and probably doing workouts that I shouldn't have been doing, but I'm just screw it. This is more for my mental health than physical at this point. It's a little bit of both. And then as far as prosthetics go, the first prosthetic I had was actually really excited about, and it was a really cool process. It was this robotic hand, and it was really cool. It was robotic looking, and it could do all these hand movements, and kind of made me feel like the Terminator, which is pretty neat. And so that was fun. And then I didn't get my leg until just before Christmas in 2019. But it's frustrating because I'm just not wired to just sit around all day. I've just always been active in something. So that's part of pushing myself too far as well. And even when I got my leg, it's not like, okay, we got the leg now, we can finally get out and start running again and exercising. There's an adjustment period. You have to get multiple adjustments on your prosthetic, and then your limb changes very rapidly after an amputation. So before you know it, you have to get fitted for a new one and get fitted for a new one, and so on and so forth. And then eventually, you level out. But yeah, and then just learning to do, what I could still do with prosthetics on. And I'm fortunate and thankful that I can still do pretty much everything I used to do. It's just a little trickier now.
Share with us, Josh, the feeling that you experienced the day that you were released from rehab to go home and start your new normal.
Mixed feelings. I was so anxious to get home. It was just kept thinking about my kids and thinking about my wife too. But her, like, I could at least see her every day. She came and saw me every day. But my kids, that was rough. I miss my kids. I'm a very involved dad, and I miss them like crazy. It was especially hard because my son, what was he, 6 at the time? 5.
Yeah.
And he has pretty severe autism. And so when he would visit me in rehab, didn't understand what was going on. And he's nonverbal, so he can't talk to you. And he was just, I was so excited to see him, but he didn't know how to process everything, and he was very emotional, and so we didn't really get the bond there, and that was rough because I missed him. My daughter, she was in that fun stage as a toddler, and we've always been very close, so very anxious to get home to see my family. And even my dog, we had a little puppy at the time, a little lab puppy, just a few weeks old. And speaking of, wasn't talking about you.
Right on cue.
Yeah. I miss my whole family, but also you're scared. It's like you're going into a whole new, not really knowing what to expect all over again. And now I'm not surrounded by all the machines and the doctors who are there if something goes wrong.
Yes.
I was,
Well, you had to crawl up the stairs.
Yeah, I had to crawl, and I slept on the couch for a long time just because I couldn't really get upstairs. It was scary, for sure. For sure it was scary. Yeah, I think that was one of the first conversations we had before I went to bed the first night in the house. And I don't think I'm a super emotional guy, but I got emotional. I was like, I'm scared. I'm scared to go to sleep.
Yeah.
She comforted me, even though she was just as scared as I was, said and did the right things in that moment, and was, doing everything that a caretaker's supposed to do. So it worked out in the end.
So Josh, let's talk about the amputation. What was going through your mind when you realized that you were losing a limb? How did you cope? How did it affect your mental health? And did you experience what we hear of phantom pain? Did you experience any of that?
Sure, all of it. The first thing I lost was my hand, and I met with a podiatrist in the hospital, and he told me I was going to lose, all my toes and parts of my feet, but that wasn't as detrimental to me as the hand, because I'm like, well, who cares about toes anyway? Like, I didn't care as much. And I met with my plastic surgeon, and he came and he told me, I want you to start thinking about what life would look like without your hand. And that hit me, and from that point on, like, the denial was gone, and it's like, okay, I guess that's the reality we're dealing with, that I was kind of afraid of, but figured it might happen anyway. And then I asked him, I was like, what does this mean for me in firefighting? He's like, that's up to you, which I appreciated that. I felt like that was the right response. And, in the hospital, I wasn't getting out of bed. I wasn't really able to. I had a lot of time to myself. So I did a lot of research and saw that amputees can still be firefighters. And I said, okay, I'm gonna figure this out, because I fought so hard for this dream of being a firefighter. But sometimes you have to fight to keep it too, So that's the route I went. And as I kind of progressed and got closer to that goal, and as I got healthier, just the idea of being a double amputee firefighter just seemed less appealing to me, and what used to bring me so much joy during the job, that just wasn't there anymore. It just felt like the amputations for me were too much of a distraction. If anybody's in a similar situation, I'm not encouraging you to go down that road by any means. That's just, for me, it just wasn't something I wanted to pursue anymore. But you know, time went on, and now I'm pretty used to this lifestyle as an amputee. So,
Surviving Sepsis is a production of the IPRO QIN-QIO. Tune in to future episodes to hear more of Josh and Chelsea's story. Special thanks to Josh and Chelsea Woodward. Producer-host Patrick Archambault. Executive producer Teresa Jacobellis. Executive producer Sarah Butterfield. Video recording and editing Louis Cerritos. This material was prepared by the IPRO QIN-QIO, a Quality Innovation Network quality improvement organization under contract with the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, an agency of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, HHS. Views expressed in this material do not necessarily reflect the official views or policies of CMS or HHS, and any reference to a specific product or entity herein does not constitute endorsement of that product or entity by CMS or HHS.